afternoon. Thank you for joining us, everyone, for the Raleigh Transit Authority meeting for September on September 10th, 2020. Before we do introductions and roll call, I'm going to give it to David Eatman to do our preamble, and then I'll follow up with some instructions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So today we are meeting virtually. Obviously, beginning of this month, the governor issued what we are calling now step 2.5. So we haven't entered our third phase yet, but we did see a little bit of progress, obviously. With that stated, though, the governor has issued executive orders requiring individuals to remain in their homes except for certain activities, closing many businesses to the public, and prohibiting any gatherings which did not comply with its terms. Because of the risk to the public that would arise from continued in-person meetings pursuant to NCGS 166A-19.24, the city is converting Raleigh Transit Authority meetings to a remote electronic format for the duration of the state of this emergency. As I stated, some things have changed since the original adoption of the preamble, but the city, as well as council and all council committees, remain in a virtual format, and so does the Raleigh Transit Authority. So thank you for that opportunity and for allowing me to obviously letting our public know why we're in a virtual format.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Just quickly, before we do introductions, please keep your cameras on so that the folks, the two people watching at 3 o'clock in the morning can see who's talking to them. We'll go from there. If we want to start with introductions, I'll begin roll call, and if you would please unmute yourself and say here, that would be helpful. I'm going to start alphabetically with this list. So, Brian Burnett.
Here, present.
Daniel Coleman.
Present.
Karen Ringe. Karen Ringe.
So lay it back down.
Maurice Cook.
Here.
Robert Owen.
Present.
So for the record, we can see Karen, but we can't hear her all of a sudden. But she's there.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can.
Yeah, no mute.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button.
All right. So with the introductions, are there any revisions or additions to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I don't know if this is exactly a revision, but we discussed this at the marketing committee meeting. We did vote to change our name from the Raleigh Transit Authority to the Go Raleigh Transit Authority, and that is not reflected on the agenda at this time. So I think Andrea said she was going to take care of that for
We do have that under item 2A.
Oh, is that? I'm sorry. I jumped the gun.
It's on board docs.
That name change is official now?
It is not.
It is not. Okay.
Oh, I thought we had. Okay, sorry. My bad.
I believe that I'm looking at board docs, and that's the first item to vote on. All right. So with that, let's get started, and we'll pause it for any comments, public comment if there is any. From David, we'll go to the name change, and Karen, if you want to add any background to that, that's helpful too.
Mr. Chair.
Please do.
I did notice one item. Mr. Owens had brought it to my attention, and I did not realize that it was not under our preliminary matters. But it appears that the minutes approval is not under item 1. So know that the board did receive 2 sets of minutes, one from June or July. We had actually a change in months during that time frame where we 1 month got delayed. But you should at least have August. So again, I know that you had that for the full duration of the receipt of the agenda. So again, you may want to add that item under preliminary matters to accept the August minutes. And then we can come back to anything that was pending in October.
That would be very helpful. All right, so we'll put the minutes up for approval if folks are okay with that. Anyone want to make a motion?
Is this August minutes only? Because I don't think we've approved the June minutes. And there is something about the June minutes that I would want to point out at the appropriate time.
Yes, please.
Okay, on page 4 of the June minutes, our chair, Tallulah Pay, is quoted, and I think a word was left out. It's not clear what her question was. On page 4 at the top. Are you able to see that? I have my hard copy. I can read it to you if you want.
I'm looking at it. I can't find the quote. What's the word missing, or what's the sentence?
Okay, let me grab my copy. It's right here with me. Just a moment.
I can read it off right here. I've got it as well.
Okay.
So Chairman Amilcaye felt bringing items before the authority merely to advise what has already been done wastes the authority's time, and felt members could have been notified. It was pointed out. Yeah.
All right. On page 4.
Yes.
The sentence at the top, the first full sentence, complete sentence on page 4.
Yep. The one I just read.
Chairman Omakaya, and her name is misspelled here, questioned how many things does the authority vote on they don't to vote on. Or I think maybe the word should have been needed on that they don't vote on. But to me, it's not clear what her question was. And I'm just talking about my own ideology now. To me, minutes need to be clear enough that someone who was not in the meeting could read it and have a reasonable understanding of what was said.
Okay, so here's the solution, just so we keep moving. I'm gonna table June minutes, and I'm just gonna move August minutes, and we can send those back to Brenda to be edited if she needs to.
Okay, and Tallulah Pay can probably clear it up, as to what she actually said.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do I have a motion for the August minutes?
Now, should everybody have received the August minutes by now? I have not. Of course, I don't vote anyway. I'm an alternate, but I've not seen them. I'd like to read them.
They were part of the agenda package, correct?
Yes, that is correct. So they are attached to the agenda you received over email from CJ.
Okay, I'll have to go back and look again. But
I move to approve the minutes.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay.
A second.
Thank you. I'm going to go through the roll call real quick to get the votes. Brian?
Yes. Present.
No, I mean to get your vote on August minutes? Aye or nay?
July minutes.
No, August.
August?
We're on August now. Yeah, we're on August minutes. Yes, I'd make a motion to approve those. Yes.
All right. Daniel?
I don't have a copy of the August minutes, so I have to refrain.
They're at the end of the agenda that CJ emailed us.
All right.
My vote stands. The refrain stands.
Okay. Karen?
Aye.
Morris?
Aye.
Robert?
I'm an alternate. Can't vote.
That's true, even the past thing. So with mine, with Daniel and Robert not able to, Robert not able to vote and Daniel abstaining.
Abstaining. I'm sorry.
So we'll bring it up in October. All right, moving to the first item of business for this agenda is the name change.
May I speak for a minute?
We'll get to comments from the committee members before you leave. I'll get you, but I want to get the agenda started if possible. Is it regarding the agenda, the minutes?
It's regarding the issue before the board right now, the name change.
Oh, perfect. Well, let's let Mr. Eatman introduce it and then give everyone context because I'm not familiar with it as much. So, and then you can comment. David, do you want to talk about the name change?
Yes, sir. My apologies. So this actually started right around the new year. It was actually a little bit pre-COVID when we were discussing a name change. That was discussed briefly in the marketing committee. Due to the Regional Transportation Alliance, acronym RTA, as well as the Raleigh Transit Authority with the acronym of RTA, there had been discussions of changing or requesting from council the change of the Raleigh Transit Authority's name, at least in our marketing materials and other correspondence to the general public, to the Go Raleigh Transit Authority, since Go Raleigh was established a few years back, obviously, as part of the regional branding effort. With that, we never memorialized a process to take this to council for approval. So we did put this as an action item for your consideration and discussion today. And with your direction, we could move forward with presenting this to council at a future meeting. This name change could go to council in a couple of different formats, and we would certainly work with council and city staff to make sure that we know the proper process that this could move forward, again, if so desired by the board. So again, we're just looking for direction, and we'll be happy to take this forward as directed.
Karen, since this is your
I'll
committee,
speak to
do you
this.
want to say anything?
So actually, for those of you who are a little newer to the Transit Authority, we actually have been discussing this for some time. It's come up various times. We changed the name of our, we used to be the Capillary Transit System, and we've been changed to the Go Raleigh Transit System now, and that's to have our name echo all the other regional transit authorities, including Go Triangle, Go Chapel Hill, and Go Durham. So we felt like it only makes sense for our transit authority's name to reflect what our transit system is actually called. So that is why we thought rather than just the Raleigh Transit Authority, we ought to be the Go Raleigh Transit Authority. Anyhow, the marketing committee recommends that we take this action. Thanks.
You had a question?
Well, this is another question. Karen, what's Durham's transit authority called now?
Well, they're actually overseen by Go Triangle. Go Durham is.
So Durham does not. Durham doesn't have a.
Not to my knowledge, because Go Triangle runs Go Durham, and also the Go Triangle board is called the Go Triangle Board of Trustees.
So, this came up, I don't know, 15 years ago, and the council asked me at that time to go out and pool that idea around all across the city, different civic groups, this, that, and the other. So only thing that I would suggest is that ought to have a little bit more buy-in from the masses rather than a top-down administrative decision, just to make sure that everybody's on board with that name change, one. And then ultimately, is everybody on board with ceding control of our transit business to the regional authority, which this all is really a part and parcel of going to a regional transit authority versus having the local transit authorities that we have now. So I think we ought to give it a little more thought before we run smack dab into it. And then your point is Durham doesn't even have one. You're saying that the Go Triangle serves as Durham's transit authority, right? You said that, right?
Well, Danny, yeah. Durham made the decision at some point that they were going to have Go Triangle manage their transit system. That is not the case with Go Raleigh. Go Raleigh, actually, our transit system is much bigger than anybody else's in the region. We are the transit, our Go Raleigh is ultimately, the final decisions are made by our Raleigh City Council. This is not about the service of what we're doing. This is, which absolutely should require extensive public input. This is simply the name of our board. And I don't really see why that would require a lot of public input. I mean, this is not about the services that we're providing to this. Is really just about actually decreasing confusion for the public to understand what our board is what we're actually about. All the buses now say Go Raleigh at the bus stops. Increasingly, I'll say Go Raleigh. All the marketing and materials about our system is Go Raleigh. To me, and from the marketing committee, and this is in conversations we've had frequently with this board, is that it would actually help the public's understanding of what we do, and if they have question or concern about our system, that they would come to the Go Raleigh Transit Authority. So,
and all I'm saying, Karen, is that have some sort of a survey to back you up. That's all. Have y'all done a survey, whether talking to the people that are riding the buses? Just think about all the effort we put into the R line and other things. We get citizens input and this, that, and the other. I'm just saying, before we make this change, let us have some survey that backs up that this is what the population wants, and it's just not something that we've done administratively in a very top-down fashion.
Mr. Chair, this is Dar, City Attorney's Office. It'd be helpful if the members, such as Mr. Coleman, periodically stated their name when they're talking, but for no other reason, for the minutes purposes.
I appreciate that.
Sure.
I understand where Danny's coming from, but I have to respectfully disagree. At this point, what we have is actually more complicated for people. We actually have 3 entities that people have to learn in order to make any public comment. They have to find us as the Raleigh Transit Authority. They have to be aware of Go Raleigh, and they also have to figure out how to address City Council, which makes the final decision. In this case, what we're doing is we're simplifying this process so that when they know about Go Raleigh as a system, they also know the authority is the Go Raleigh authority, which oversees it, versus versus us overseeing transportation as sidewalks and bike and pedestrian and stuff like that, which we do not oversee. So it makes it a step faster for folks, and I think clarifies where we're at. As far as I'm understanding, in the year that we've been talking about this, it's not been brought up that we're required to have a public notice for anything like this. And if the 5 people that know that the Raleigh Transit Authority exists have to learn a new term, so that hopefully the 4 million daily riders of the daily ridership can actually get in touch with us, I think that's going to be better in the long term. Is there any other questions or comments before we make a motion?
Not for me.
All right. Well, Danny, we can table this and have a continued discussion in the committee for, I mean, it's not going to hurt us to have another month on top of the last 12 or so that we've been discussing this, if you need more clarification.
Has left the meeting.
Who left the meeting? All right, Daniel Coleman speaking here. I don't remember this conversation going on past 12 months, but whatever.
Okay, so
Karen Ringe speaking again. We've talked about this at past retreats. We've talked about it in the marketing committee. I've talked about it even somewhat informally with others, but I know we've discussed it, and we've even discussed it at the board. And Danny, I am the first person to say we need public input. In fact, my report is going to be a lot about public input on things that the public really cares about, which is our services. I just don't understand why changing the name of our administrative board would anybody would care about that. And as Nathan said, this is really about making it easier for people to find us, and to have a board that reflects our service. It's not that I don't believe in public input. It's really just, I see this more as an administrative thing to help improve communications. So.
Well, Karen, Daniel speaking, I just think this sets the stage for the absorption of our duties by the regional approach to the whole transportation, doing away with Raleigh's board in lieu of having the big board that meets, the Go Triangle board, absorbing our responsibility. I just think that that's a step in that direction.
Well,
I'm not too keen about that.
Danny? This is Brian speaking. Danny, have you seen that in other capacities or other city boards? Because I do. I mean, huh?
That was the intent 15 years ago, was to bring in all Durham, Raleigh, Chapel Hill, all of them, doing away with the local boards, and they'd be absorbed by the Triangle board. Then it was TTA, and then council asked us to go around at that time and pool and get community input into it from across the city, and we did, and there was no great desire by citizens across the city to do it, and it got tabled. Now, 15 years later, I just think that citizens ought to be able to say, look, this is what's being put on the table. Ultimately, this might lead to Raleigh losing control of this transit by way of having our board absorbed into the regional board. Regionalism is alive and well, and there's arguments for regionalism. So, and this is a step toward that regionalism approach. So I'm just saying, I'm not against it. I'm not in favor of it. I just don't think we have discussed it enough with the citizens for them to say, yes, we would like to have this. or what are the different aspects of the conversation. That's all. I might be overthinking the issue.
I think
I'm only one vote. You know, y'all can vote me down easily.
Well, not today. This is Nathan Spencer, and anyway, I'm not interested in not hearing your voice. I just don't I don't buy into the conspiracy theory. So I'm going to put a motion forward to table this item to bring up to October's board meeting, and the committee maybe can have a little more discussion about it as well.
Okay, I just want to conclude by saying, Danny, I don't read that your suggestion that this is moving us towards regionalism from this name change. Nothing could be done on that front without a vote of the city council and a whole lot of other players involved at a regional level. So I understand your concerns, but I don't see why this would lead to that we don't have that kind of authority. This is just a name change for an administrative board. And as you know, we ultimately, the city council finalizes all of our decisions or not. But in any event, I'm happy to table it till next month. I know that there are others who are not here who've expressed the desire to make the name change, so that's fine.
Karen, is that a second?
Yes.
Okay. And the only thing I will say on that end is it would, in terms of the governing board for TPAC, which wasn't around 15 years ago, it would be actually a very unwise thing for Go Raleigh to go into Go Triangle, because as it stands, we have a larger vote on the governing board. So we have more advantage of being independent right now, and I think the city council appreciates that. But we're going to table this if everyone agrees. That's a motion on the table. Vote aye or nay. I'll call your name out. Brian Burnett?
Nay.
Danny? This is a vote to table till a later time.
Aye. Daniel Coleman says aye.
All right, Karen?
Aye.
Morris?
Nay.
All right, so that does not pass. But I personally am not going to put a motion on the table for name change approval at this point if we don't have the votes for it. So I suggest we move on to the next item and take this up later. I'm going to use my chair authority and move us forward to the next topic, which is Fare Free on Election Day, November 3rd, 2020. Mr. Eatman, do you want to take that?
Yes, thank you. So historically, the Raleigh Transit Authority has requested that council authorize Fare Free Election Day. As everyone is certainly aware, we are currently have suspended fares with Go Raleigh, as we have suspended fares due to COVID across the Triangle. We are not sure that we'll have fares reinstated by the election. We would like to think in a positive way and say that we would be in a situation where we would have fares reinstated potentially, but we certainly don't know that. So because of the logistics involved with making sure that we have the proper approvals in place and that we can plan for that in advance, we are requesting that the board authorize us to take a fare-free resolution to council for election day if so needed. Certainly, if we remain fare-free, then that would not be needed. But again, this is just in case that would be needed.
Okay. Any conversation on this? Discussion?
Karen Ringe here. From a marketing perspective, as marketing chair, I would encourage, even if we continue without fairs through the election, I would definitely encourage our communications team to use the reminder to the public that it is free to ride the bus to go vote.
Yes, we could do that.
Yeah. This is Brian Burnett here. I also think that's a good thing to do in practice going forward in perpetuity. That's just my 2 cents on it.
Absolutely agree. Okay. Anyone want to put a motion on the table?
I like the motion.
So move, Daniel. And that was Brian with the motion.
Mm-hmm.
Brian made the motion. Daniel.
But
seconded.
Brian needs to say Brian makes to keep the attorney happy. Brian probably needs to say Brian Burnett makes the motion, blah, blah, blah. Right, Mr. Attorney?
Yes, ideally, the person who's making the motion should identify themselves. I move. The other member who seconds the motion should identify themselves.
Yeah.
All right, so.
Brian Burnett would like to move to motion.
I, Dan Coleman, second Brian's motion.
All right. All those in favor, I'll read you out. Brian Burnett.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Morris.
Aye.
And myself is an aye. So that passes. And so we're going to ask the staff to put the word out that fare free on November 3rd, 2020 for Election Day, whether we're collecting fares or not, as a great
Mr. Chair.
election day. Yes.
Mr. Chair, do we need to also maybe extend that to the early vote, during the early vote cycle also? I mean, we're not charging anyway, like you said in the preamble to the vote that we just had. But early vote starts in October. And should we not offer that same service to the early voters also? It's just food for thought.
And I will say, Go Raleigh helped with working with Wake County to put together a very nice guide for where to go, which route to take to early vote, because there are so many more sites. So that was a very nice thing. I'd entertain that same idea. Is there more discussion on it?
Well, I tell you what, at the very least, should we are all the early vote sites on an established route for Go Raleigh?
Hi, this is Andrea with the communications team, and we actually just shared that information yesterday on social, and we will be sharing that, and it will be live on the Go Raleigh site as soon as early voting is open. All the locations that buses can take you to within a half-mile walking distance.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you, Andrea.
Is there any discussion with regards to extending that from any other members?
You mean a free ride?
Correct. I'm trying to take the temperature of the board.
I think it would be symbolic, and I would like to see it done.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? And it sounds like the staff's already on it. So.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, Andrea, it's tough.
Yep, got my vote.
All right, so we're gonna.
Can we go back and amend Brian's motion?
Yeah, so we'll amend the motion to include early voting, and I'll take roll call again, or roll vote again on y'all.
Mr. Chair,
with regards to extending it to early voting. Yes.
since we have done a historical fare free during election day. We have built that into our budget. Obviously, we're in really strange times now. We don't know when we'll be able to reinstate fares, so it may be a moot point. But obviously, as we brought this forward, we did have the financial resources, even if we were in a normal pre-COVID environment, to cover the fare free for election day. Anything beyond that, we have not identified revenue. Just putting that out there. That doesn't mean that we won't cover that with our CARES Act funds, which were going to help us make it through this fiscal year COVID hardship anyway. But again, I did want to point out that anything beyond the regular fare-free day, which has been budgeted for election day, is not currently identified. It doesn't mean we can't identify those funds. It's just, again, it's a balance between we don't know when we're going to go back to fares, and so we're balancing all of these different variables from a budget perspective.
So how about, David, put that on our finance committee for October finance committee, and then the subsequent full board meeting the next week will still put us in advance of early voting starting. And that way we'll follow the policy, the protocol that you just identified. This is Daniel speaking, Daniel Coleman.
All right, I'm comfortable with that, Daniel, and yes.
All right, thank you. So again, one other approach, I'm not saying this, again, you could approve the election day today and then bring the remaining items or any additional item that you would like to look at from a financial perspective into committee next month. That would at minimum make sure that we can go ahead and have this ready if it needs to go to council. Since you only meet once a month, that's our difficulty. So if we miss anything in October, we're going to miss a window. So I would go ahead, and if you wanted to memorialize election day, then we can discuss that in early October, and you can make action in October if you like. But at least this piece will be done. That's all I'm saying.
Well, the piece is done. Brian has made that motion. We voted it up. So that motion, that act is already can go to council as it is now with their approval, right?
That is correct. We have passed a motion for election day.
Very good.
All right.
So we won't need to amend the motion. We won't need to amend the motion at this point. Basically, we're gonna push it till next month. Is that what I'm hearing, David?
Correct, and I don't think we need a vote to send it over to finance and policy. I believe so. If the committee, and Danny, you're on that committee, so if you would take that up next month and bring it to the full board with your decision.
Well, I'm going to take it up with Michael, but yes, okay, okay. All right, that's good. Okay. Daniel's saying that's good, Mr. Attorney.
That was Daniel Coleman, by the way. He said it was good.
Be nice to the attorney. He keeps us out of jail.
Yeah, that's good.
We'll go to the next item then on the docket, which is the the project management plan 5310. Morgan, do you want to present that to us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Andrew, you can go to the first slide. This is the project management plan for our Section 5310 funding agenda item. This item is being returned back to the board for approval. Its initial review was on last month, and this is a current document that it has been approved by the RTA as of 2015. Next slide, Andrew. Just a reminder, the project management plan, the PMP, is a federally required document. This particular plan outlines how we utilize our FTA Section 5310 funding. This funding is designated specifically for those particular services and projects for seniors and individuals with disabilities. This plan outlines how we identify eligible applicants, eligible projects, and the selection criteria for these projects. In addition, this particular draft, was developed in coordination with city transit staff as well as CAMPO staff. In addition, we received commentary from local stakeholders during last grant cycle, which was incorporated within this draft. Next slide. The reasons for this update was to ensure that we were in accordance with the latest federal guidance. The previous document, well, the current document was under MAP 21 federal guidance, and now we are currently under the FAST Act. So we wanted to make sure that we were in accordance and incorporated what was necessary for this particular guidance. In addition, we wanted yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Just before we slide past, what's the difference between MAP 21 and the FAST Act? I mean, down and dirty, what's the difference?
Just some differences in reporting requirements. That's probably the larger gist of it, just some slight differences in reporting requirements.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That was me, Mr. Attorney, Daniel.
I was going to remind you, Mr. Coleman, please state your name.
I'm sorry. I'm trying. Please forgive me.
Thank you, Danny. In addition, it was updated in accordance to make sure that it was aligning with our locally coordinated human service public transit plan, which was updated in 2019 for a full update, as well as had a minor update in 2020, which was earlier this year. Just a reminder, the RTA did endorse both of those updates. And last but not least, this particular update does include a more robust application process. A lot of this information, a lot of the updates within the application process was due to the local stakeholder feedback that we received during the grant cycle. In this, that we're requiring a little bit more detail with the financial information that we require from our subrecipients, and for giving a clear explanation for grant oversight, financial oversight that is required with this funding, as well as the auditing processes that go along with this sort of funding. Next slide. A part of this update process is a public commenting period, which was open on August 14th, the day after the August RTA board meeting, and it closed at noon of today. During that public commenting period process, we updated our city website to provide information about the PMP plan. We emailed to multiple listservs, so a little over 5,000 contacts. We updated the transit newsletter with information about the PMP update, as well as we had social media weekly postings. Campo was also utilizing many of their social media and communication mediums for public commenting as well. As of to date, we only received 2 comments. However, the 2 comments weren't necessarily specific towards the plan, but more so giving favorable reference to the paratransit service. Next slide. And just a reminder of the timeline with this process, our current edition of the PMP was updated and approved in 2015. We received feedback from our local stakeholders in 2019. We developed this particular draft during the fall of 2019 and going into spring of this year. However, that time our timeline was interrupted due to COVID, but we brought this information back to the RTA board in August. Public commenting period was complete, and now we are requesting RTA approval. Next slide. Staff is requesting approval of the updated, tongue-tied, program management plan, and if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
I'll open it up to the board for any questions. Okay, not hearing any. I want to thank you for this because it seems like really good work. It's also really awesome that we're asking to do this on ourselves to keep a good review and keep looking at our services. And I love that we're bringing some attention to the paratransit system because it is very vital to our entire system. So with that, is there a motion that someone will make for this?
This is Karen.
I move.
I move
Okay.
to approve the program management plan and to thank Morgan Simmons for all of her hard work.
And I, Daniel Coleman, second the motion that Karen Renz just made in support of Morgan and all the work that good work she does.
All right, so with Karen making that motion and Daniel seconding, I'm going to call your name out and give me your aye or nay. Brian Burnett.
Aye. Brian Burnett, aye.
Daniel Coleman.
Aye, Daniel Coleman, say aye.
Karen Ringe.
Aye.
Morris Cook.
Aye.
And myself is an aye. Thank you very much. That motion passes. Morgan, great work on that, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, and it was a team effort, so thank you very much.
Moving on to the next item, and the last item that we are voting on is the memorandum of agreement and roles and responsibilities.
Right. Andrew, you can go to the first slide. Like mentioned, we are bringing our memorandums of agreements for our transit services with our municipal partners, Roseville, Garner, and Knightdale. This agenda item is returning for approval. It was brought and reviewed during the August RTA board meeting. Next slide. Just major takeaways from this particular type of agreement. This was a birth child of the Wake Transit Plan's TPAC process subcommittee. And a part of that staff, City of Raleigh staff coordinated with Garner, Knightdale, and Roseville to develop this agreement context. This is a non-financial agreement, and it's to ensure that there is collaboration and coordination between us as a service provider and the respective municipalities that we are providing services to. And this coordination would be on all levels of transit service implementation, to include the determination of the route path, identifying passenger amenities, maintenance of those set amenities, marketing needs, and so forth. Next slide. So staff is requesting approval of the municipal agreements with Garner, Knightdale, and Roseville for their respective transit services. And I believe that these agreements were attached to the agenda.
We did see them.
I'm sorry.
And Morgan, no, I said that I did see them. But Morgan, before I open it up to the board for questions, I seem to remember a similar agreement that we did with Carrie, where we opened, when we were talking about the BRT early stage, and we were talking about municipal sort of a co-working with, I don't remember the name exactly, but there's precedent for this in our system already. Is there not?
I'm sorry. You're asking, is there precedence for these sort of agreements?
Yeah, like no, within our already adopted system, do we have the similar agreements with other municipalities?
I believe we do. Well, actually, not I believe, I know we do. So currently, we have a similar agreement with Wake Forest because we provide services for them. And that particular agreement was actually the sample agreement that the TPAC process subcommittee used when developing this agreement that we have, that we're going to be using as our from here on out. With the Wake Transit Plan, and as we're continuing to expand services and have larger service providers like Go Raleigh, Go Cary, and Go Triangle that are providing these services to municipalities, we need these sort of agreements just to make sure that everyone is able to come collectively at the table and develop the route, so that you don't have a larger service provider that's in layman's terms calling all the shots and not allowing the municipality to have some buy-in, but then at the same time providing municipalities an opportunity to provide that feedback and develop the route based on their local needs. Yes.
Okay.
We do have a similar like this already in place with Wake Forest, and that was kind of the sample.
So Morgan,
Thank you.
so
Yeah.
Wake Forest, do we have Daniel speaking, Daniel Coleman, Morgan, do we have a Go Wake Forest brand? And do we have a Go Apex brand? Do we have a Go Holly Springs brand? I mean, how many, all these 12 municipalities are going to have their own brand in the scheme of things that you're speaking of, or could have their own brand in the scheme of things?
So I think those are conversations that are being had about the branding of the smaller municipalities. I am not aware that Go Wake Forest is a thing, but, and I could be mistaken, so anyone can chime in on that. But they do fall under, they fall under Go Raleigh services, and so they're, so we have their information listed under our system. But I know that that has been conversations within TPAC on a lot of the different committees about what that future branding is going to look like as more municipalities start to come online. So I would just say stay tuned, really.
And just to comment on that, Morgan, this is Nathan Spencer. Just to comment on that, in the last survey period with regards to the Wake Transit Plan, Wake Forest had an overwhelming response to the survey. So they're very involved and very ready to be, if we have any system that's going to go to a Go other municipality anytime soon, I think it's going to be Wake Forest. So I'm looking forward to it. And I'm hopefully having their own transit authority at some point as well. Are there any other comments from board members?
Big comment. Oh, Brian Burnett here. I'd like to make a comment. Just on what you said, Nathan, especially with Roseville coming on as strong as it has, with the ridership being near the Wake Tech campus, and then with the explosive growth of the Roseville community, I definitely think it's only a matter of time that Wake Forest, comes on and its own RTA, which I think will be greatly needed, because I think it'll be very supplemental to Roseville, because they're just gonna have such a huge population growth as well. So I just wanted to add to that.
I appreciate that. Any other members have any comments before we put a motion on the table?
So restate the memoranda, of the memoranda of Daniel Coleman asking to restate the motion on the floor for clarity.
I haven't put a motion on the floor yet, Dan.
I can restate the
recommendation from.
I can restate the action that's requested, and you can.
Okay, that's what I meant. Thank you, Morgan.
No problem. The action requested, and let me, Andrea, I'll just pull it up for my paper. Staff request approval of the municipal agreements with Garner, Knightdale, and Roseville for their respective transit services.
Do I have a motion?
The question, Daniel, I have a question. Does that mean that those three, was it three municipalities that you mentioned, would have the option of having a Go, that whatever the name of that municipality is, or does the memorandum of agreement say it's going to be Go Raleigh servicing those three municipalities?
Yes.
This particular memorandum is specifically for ensuring that we are in coordination as we're developing routes. It's not defining branding of sorts. It's really to make sure that as we are moving forward in developing and maintaining the routes, that everybody understands their roles and responsibilities. So the service knows exactly what we're supposed to do for them, and Roseville, Garner, and Knightdale knows exactly what they're supposed to do for us. So in a lot of times, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So is those three municipality administration, the mayor, whatever, the council, or the transit people, whatever, are they supporting this memorandum of agreement?
That is correct.
They are?
Yes. We have received partial signatures from every one of the municipalities with and in waiting for our approval.
And this is Karen Ringe. This has been part of one of the first priorities of the Wake Transit Plan, which was to expand service into all 12 municipalities eventually. And so, these routes have already been, have been discussed, and this is just making sure everybody knows who's in charge of what so that they can get expanded transit service. And I support.
My last comment on this matter, Dan Coleman. I can't help but wonder. I think back to how when Raleigh was taking over everybody's water system and all the bad blood that we had between the other municipalities. And I just want to make sure that we have learned our lesson from marketing our utility to all the other the ones that wanted us to come in and help them with their utilities. And have we learned the lessons that we should have learned there in crafting this memorandum of agreement now that puts us into managing their transit stuff? I'm just curious, I just can't. I remember some of the other stuff when it was water, and now it's transit, and I just want to make sure we're not being the bully on the block, so to speak.
Danny, this is Karen Ringe. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Morgan.
Oh, no, go ahead, Karen.
Well, I was just going to say, Danny, this transit service was at the request of these municipalities. They absolutely want improved transit system to their communities. This was a really important part of the whole Wake Transit Plan and approval of the transit referendum. The mayors at the time voted to support the transit referendum because they wanted improved transit service. So I don't see this as this is being motivated by Raleigh, but really being motivated and being requested by the towns of Knightdale, Rollsville, and Garner.
Absolutely. I agree exactly with what Karen mentioned, and also just want to add to the whole reasoning for developing these sort of agreements is to just like that, to make sure that we aren't bullying anyone, that any service provider doesn't have the opportunity to bully, as you would say, another municipality or a smaller area with like having a service that they actually don't want. This is, like I said, this was something that was developed in coordination by all of the municipalities. They've all had buy-in on the development of the draft and the language within the draft. And like I said, they have all signed it. So they're fully on board.
Okay, so I support it. Whoever makes the motion, I'll support it. Daniel.
This is Nathan Spencer. I just wanted to also say that this has been in practice already before the agreement. I in my daily life, I work with Wake County, and I have spoken at length with the planners from Garner and from Knightdale, and spoken with the elected officials from Rollsville, who all have spoken very highly of working with Go Raleigh and appreciative of the work that they've done, and the fact that specifically with conversations with Garner, Morgan has come with expertise and the ability to share and help out versus telling them what they need to do. So I think this is good to put it on paper, but I also know that we've been good partners, and we've been growing as a county together versus Raleigh taking over. Do I have a motion by a board member to put this on the table?
This is Karen Ringe. I move that we approve the memorandum of agreement between Raleigh and Rollsville, Knightdale, and Garner.
And this is Daniel Coleman seconding Karen Ringe's motion. But I have a question after we get past this particular issue, or this particular point in time.
Is the question regarding the motion?
No, let's go on and vote the motion up. Let's go on and get the motion out of the way, and then I ask my question after that.
Okay, so I'm going to call your name. Say aye or nay. Brian Burnett.
Aye.
Daniel Coleman.
Brian Burnett. Aye. Sorry.
Daniel Coleman says aye.
Karen Ringe.
Aye.
Morris Cook,
Aye.
and myself as an aye. That motion passes, and we have an MOU with Roseville, Knightdale, and Garner. Thank you.
Now, my question, I see the 12 municipalities competing in the commercial marketplace for industry, for people to live there, and so forth and so on. Now, so the memorandum of agreement that we have, would it preclude, will it encourage a carry? I know Cary already has a go carry, but will it allow the 3 municipalities that we assigned this memorandum of agreement with to have a go, particularly, can they have a go care or whatever, the 3 municipalities were, Roseville, whatever. So will we allow them to have a go Roseville bus, or are they going to have a go Raleigh bus servicing their community for the time being?
Mr. Chair, this is David Eatman.
Please go.
Yeah, David.
So currently, our services are under the umbrella of Go Raleigh. Go Raleigh does serve a number of communities, Knightdale, Zebulon, Wendell, Wake Forest. While there have been discussions on how certain services may be tailored, especially for some of the small community services that may pop up that will feed our main service lines, I think that we will remain using Go Raleigh as the umbrella brand, to the municipalities for those that we serve. Cary is actually, it may serve some municipalities in the southern and western portion of the county. So those particular jurisdictions may have a Go Cary vehicle that services them. Again, when you think of first mile and last mile opportunities within these smaller municipalities, they may want to brand that because those services will stay wholly within their municipality. So I think that's where most of the discussion has come from about sub-brands within specific municipalities. But I hope that clarifies that a bit.
Yes, and I'm sure this is an ongoing discussion. Thank you very much.
Okay, with that motion passing, I'm going to move on to the committee reports.
Mr. Chair, this is Dar Cherry. You might want to ask Mr. Coleman to adjust his camera. I think just the top of his head is showing up on RTN, not his face.
Okay.
More? I'm surprised.
Okay, shut up. Mr. Attorney, how's that? I can't see me, so you have to tell me.
We can see you much better now, Mr.
Okay.
Mr. Coleman. All right, so to go into committee reports, I'll start with the route committee, also as chair of route committee. And I will ask that we'll get one presentation, but I'm going to quickly go through the other items that we discussed before. We had an update on the ridership and how the pandemic has affected it, as well as a discussion regarding the Wake Transit performance metrics. One of the comments that was made, because the metrics for the Wake Transit plan are still in regards to ridership. One of the comments that was made and we sort of put forward was that we'd like Wake Transit to look at things from an economic development standpoint rather than a ridership standpoint, especially considering that's the basis for the Wake Transit plan. So that is still an ongoing fight. But we will continue to address that. I did ask staff to do a quick presentation on the Southern Corridor BRT, which I believe that they are prepared to do, just to give us an understanding of what is coming along and what Garner City Council has been looking at, and what will probably be presented to us even again in the future as well. So without further ado, I'll ask staff to do that presentation.
Good evening. My name is Het Patel. I'm senior planner within the transit division of the Department of Transportation, and I will present on the southern corridor for the Wake Bus Rapid Transit. Andrea, can you go to the next slide, please? So we always start all of our presentations out with where we are for all 4 corridors as it relates to BRT. The Wake BRT Dearborn Avenue corridor is advancing into 30 to 100% design at this point, with the selection of H&TB working on system standards as well as the final design for Dearborn Avenue. The southern and western corridors are sort of on the parallel tracks. The western corridor LPA was approved by RTA as well as City of Raleigh in August and Town of Cary in July. And so now we will be working on project development application for that corridor. For the southern corridor, we are still working through the processes of identifying the locally preferred alternative. And so this is our first step in actually presenting the alternatives and some of the engagement summaries that we have from the kickoff meetings. The northern corridor will be next in terms of looking at the locally preferred alternative for that corridor and beginning some level of design on that work. Next slide. So in terms of the process for the southern corridor LPA, it starts out with the 2016 Wake Transit Plan. That's where the 4 bus rapid transit corridors were identified for Wake County. One of the next steps in the process was the City of Raleigh's Southern Gateway Corridor Study, which is it happened between the Wake Transit Plan as well as the major investment study that further looked at bus rapid transit. So the major investment study in 2018 further looked at all 4 of those corridors, and then since the end of last year and all of 2020, we have been looking more specifically at the southern corridor's LPA selection and working on potentially narrowing down alternatives and getting to a locally preferred alternative. I want to emphasize that this work is done in close coordination with the Town of Garner. And overall, this entire process, ongoing coordination with our Wake Transit Plan stakeholders, the TPAC, and the other committees and agencies involved. Next slide. So the locally preferred alternative, the process to identify that, it is a multi-jurisdictional project with the southern bus rapid transit corridor entering into Town of Garner's jurisdiction. So each municipality has the authority of developing the routing recommendation within its jurisdiction. And the recommendation is based on the prior planning work, public engagement results, and values and goals that have been identified by each municipality through their comprehensive planning and transportation planning efforts. Next slide. So we have 6 alignment alternatives that were presented to the general public in February and March of this year, and these 6 alternatives were carried over from the major investment study work that was completed in 2018. For the southern corridor, we can take a look at the corridor in 2 different sections. The first section being the northern section coming out of downtown Raleigh, coming down either South Wilmington Street or South Saunders Street to where the merge for South Wilmington and South Saunders happens, and then a southern section going into Town of Garner with either staying on Fayetteville Road or the Wilmington Street extension. So looking at those different options and combining them together, we have 6 different variations that can form a bus rapid transit corridor or alignment. And so what we are trying to work through right now is looking at previous planning efforts, public engagement work, and trying to narrow the alternatives down into something that's more reasonable to consider moving forward into design. Next slide. So the recommendation that came out of the Southern Gateway Corridor study for the Southern Corridor was Wilmington Street to Wilmington Street extension. The reasons that were identified in the Southern Gateway Corridor study were the Wilmington Street has lower traffic volumes than South Saunders. There are potential bicycle and pedestrian safety concerns on South Saunders. as well as through the process of the Southern Gateway Corridor Study, public engagement, support for Wilmington Street, and the right-of-way availability on Wilmington Street compared to South Saunders were all reasons that Wilmington Street was recommended as a preferred option, at least in the northern section. And then for the same reasons, the Wilmington Street extension was identified as opposed to staying on Fayetteville within the Southern Gateway Corridor Study area. Next slide. So as I mentioned, the major investment study in 2017 and 2018 also had public engagement related to the Southern Corridor. There were 4 public meetings that occurred in various municipalities and areas, and a strong preference, about 49%, was identified for connecting Raleigh and Garner via the South Wilmington Street alignment. So that would be alignment G, as identified in the graphic on the right for that northern section. Next slide. For our work efforts under the LPA selection study, as I mentioned, we had 2 kickoff meetings earlier this year in February and March, one in Raleigh and one in Garner. We had about 70 meeting participants and about 217 survey responses. A lot of comments, and 36 people subscribed to continue to receive further updates as the project moved forward. I do want to highlight one other thing. We always ask on the survey, if people are living or working on the corridor, and if you add up the yes work, yes live and work, or yes live, basically we have more than 50% of the survey respondents that live or work along the corridor. And so that's kind of a good sign in terms of getting feedback from people that are either using transit along the corridor or living in the corridor. Next slide. So the public kickoff meetings, we had some BRT features that were highlighted and a wall activity for the public to prioritize what those features meant to them. I'm not going to go into the numbers in detail there, but some of the high priorities that stood out from the public were bicycle pedestrian connections, economic development opportunity, and the overall potential for BRT ridership for the corridor. Some of the lower priorities from a public perspective that were identified were amount of right-of-way required, the total cost to construct BRT, and the average daily vehicular traffic. Some of the lower priorities are technical in nature, and so we still do consider them as we move into identifying a locally preferred alternative. And with the Wake Transit Plan being a financially constrained model, there are costs, construction costs, and other things that need to be considered as we make a decision for the locally preferred alternative. Next slide. Again, I'm not going to focus so much on the southern portion of the Southern Corridor so much right now. We will be coming back to you with more information on that later, but this was presented to the town of Garner in July as trade-offs for that southern portion between Fayetteville Road and South Wilmington Street extension. So the Fayetteville Road, would require less right-of-way, wouldn't have any structural impacts, would be lower cost and shorter implementation timeframe, but there are the bicycle pedestrian safety concerns along that stretch. And then the Wilmington Street extension would require more right-of-way as it's new construction of roadway, and it would have some structural impacts. It would provide for more bicycle pedestrian connections, more development opportunities, and it aligns more with the public feedback that I presented in the previous slide, as well as recommendations from the previous planning efforts. Next slide. So the next steps for the Southern Corridor are for us to have a meeting with NCDOT to continue to discuss the Wilmington Street extension, continue to explore options for the Wilmington Street extension, the right-of-way impacts, sort of looking at, ways to minimize some of those impacts, as well as just continuing to look at the trade-offs between the Wilmington Street extension and Fayetteville. But we do have, for the northern section, a more clear LPA recommendation from a technical perspective, which is the South Wilmington Street over the South Saunders Street option. And so we would be bringing that back to the RTA route committee in October for a potential action, and bringing it back to RTA board in October, and then hopefully taking it to City of Raleigh Council in October as well. And that would be just for the northern section, so that way we could reduce the number of alignments being considered from 6 to 2, and focus our efforts at that point onto the southern section of the corridor and continue to work towards a locally preferred alternative to identify by the end of the year or early next year. And I think that was my last slide.
Thank you very much, Ed. Daniel, you'd mentioned you needed to leave. I think he might have. Daniel, are you still trying to leave? All right, well, Daniel had mentioned that he needed to leave at 5, so I'm just letting him know that he's excused. Does anyone have any questions for regarding the Southern Corridor alignments and the discussion, either with Raleigh or Garner?
Hey, Ed, I have a question. Brian Burnett here. I have a question. So I was looking at IMAPs and just kind of looking at some of the points you brought up. I'm turn my speaker down. The takeaways that caught my eye were the opportunities along South Saunders versus Wilmington Street. For me, when I'm looking at it, they're much more. I guess my overall point is how we arrived at Wilmington Street being more, I guess, having a higher utilization than South Saunders Street, because South Saunders Street actually it's actually bordered with more people that will be riding the bus. You know, it's actually more residential. There are actually more homes and affordable housing actually along the South Saunders Street corridor from, let's just say, whatever the street is that's Willer, maybe that's Raleigh, the Raleigh area, all the way through towards Garner. It just seems like there's a more higher concentration of people that live there that will actually ride the bus on South Saunders Street versus right now on Wilmington Street. It's like a ghost town. And so I just wanted to understand how the how the Southern Gateway Corridor study, how Wilmington Street bubbled up. Does that make sense?
Those are very good points. Have you seen that, or have you addressed it?
Yeah, so I can answer a couple of those questions. Looking at the socioeconomic data along the entire corridor, there is the population demographics for transit-dependent population in that stretch of South Saunders as well as South Wilmington Street along MLK and south of MLK. So at the route committee, I actually had a few other graphics that showed the existing ridership along South Saunders and South Wilmington, and there are clusters on both sides that were identified that support the transit ridership for either South Wilmington Street or South Saunders Street. Some of the recommendations coming out of the Southern Gateway Corridor study for a bus rapid transit project were that South Saunders, as a 6-lane facility, has a lot more traffic where buses have to compete with the vehicles in terms of being able to provide service. And Wilmington Street, there's less vehicular traffic as well as more right-of-way for dedicated bus infrastructure for bus rapid transit to provide that level of service that you would want from a BRT service. And the current, I believe the current operations plan, and David Eatman, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think the assumption on the Southern Corridor is that the South Saunders route would still continue to serve at a 15-minute, even if the BRT is identified on Wilmington Street for the Southern Corridor.
So just, I'm sorry, one other part B to that question. So just for my knowledge, to make sure that I'm speaking. it says our alternative routes. So is the thought process that there will be routes that from Wilmington to South Saunders, or that they will have their own independent route, or will it be either or?
I think there was a little bit of disturbance there, but if I heard the question correctly, they are alternatives that are being considered now, but we would be picking either or for bus rapid transit. But that does not preclude the local service on South Saunders to continue to operate at a 15-minute frequency and continue to have local service on South Saunders.
No, okay. No, thank you. That's helpful. It's just that I'm a Raleigh native, and I actually grew up in that part of town, like as a kid, and so I actually know who has been, where people actually get on to ride the bus at, and so that's it's just it's interesting to me that on the Wilmington Street that you've got now, it's about 55% commercial, like all the way from Shaw through past where the mill was, past where the bus garage is, past that, on up past where the Coca-Cola plant and all the different flex space and warehouse space is, all the way towards, for lack of a better example, everybody knows where the Bojangles is once you kind of cross over. When you cross over the street that takes you to Carolina Pines, versus on the South Saunders Street side, you got Carolina Pines, you got all of those low-income folks over there on that side of the street that point towards, where the Sam's is and where the laundromats are and all those, the gas stations, things of that nature. That's just what I'm trying to wrap my head around. And I may be overthinking it to a certain extent, but I just see the need being on South Saunders Street making more sense. That's where everyone is, versus this will be charted for new development. So I'm perplexed by that. I just wanted to hear how it bubbled up, and I'll be quiet.
Well, I can share the slides that I had for the route committee. So this was the condensed version of that presentation. So there's some more information in the route committee package that was presented earlier last week, as well as some information from the Southern Gateway Corridor study. We can pull out the transit recommendations and share with the RTA board when we bring it back in October.
Okay, that's perfect.
This is Karen Ringe. I've been to some presentations on the Southern Gateway Corridor study. And Brian, I definitely hear what you're saying, and I've wondered some of those same things about existing versus future. But one of the things that the Southern Gateway Corridor study also identified was potential areas for future affordable housing. And that is yet to be constructed. And I don't recall which side of Wilmington versus South Saunders that was on, but I think that was part of, I know that was part of the reasoning for the Wilmington. There's no question. They're also saying, while there isn't as much commercial activity right now in Wilmington, there's a lot of opportunity for land for new commercial development to happen. So it's sort of those two things, and also that we could just simply do it faster because there's already roads it's an underutilized road versus South Saunders, and so it could actually be built cheaper and faster. I think that, so those points I recall I wanted to mention.
This is Nathan Spencer. I want to both of you, I wish were at the route committee meeting, and I hope that maybe you'll come and have some comments at the October one, because those are both really, really important points. I do want to state that to the team that there may be some, it may be worth looking at established, the established population versus the future population, and underutilized, looking at using an underutilized road may be decision that we don't want to do. I can see the value in, like, from a cleaner standpoint, I would like Wilmington because I think that it's cleaner to go all the way down Wilmington to Garner, and I think it gets us closer. That said, all we have right now is a lot of commercial areas and and I'm stepping in muddy waters right now, but a discussion about a stadium and possible jobs and housing around that. I think if there's any chance in the next month for the staff to have some discussions with planning regarding this and maybe account for preservation of naturally occurring affordable housing and how that plays into BRT and ridership, this might be the right time to look at that.
Yeah, I got one last thing, because what we are authoring is a sentiment for facilitating affordable housing or not. And so that's what, to repeat what Nathan said, kind of stepping into muddy waters here, but it's like, okay, are we being so future focused that we are, we're looking at the forest and like looking at the trees in front of us because we know where people are today versus where we anticipate people being in the future? And we have to be very specific about it. Like we already know that if it's Wilmington Street corridor, then that is going to be that's going to be a certain kind of product. It's going to be a certain type of build. It's going to be a certain type of product. It's going to be a certain type of price point. And I just don't want us, booby trapping ourselves, without just kind of thinking about the ramifications. So that's my only concern. My heart is, in Southeast Raleigh. Want us to do what's best for the city, but just be mindful of what we are kind of setting in motion. And hey, I'm all about best idea wins. I just know what I see, and I have a good instinct for development these days. So that's all.
I really appreciate the input from both of you, Karen and Brian. I think you're both bringing up really good points. Brian, your personal historical knowledge on that is really, really valuable and has changed my thinking on some of this. And I'd like us to both with regards to the next committee meeting, but also maybe in anticipation of that, we might want to have some discussions with staff regarding this to get an understanding of what the best choice is. So we don't make a decision based on ease versus opportunity to help people.
Yeah, because guess what? We can all kind of sit back and kind of watch what's getting ready to happen on New Bern Avenue with the duplex village. It'll be a good precursor.
Well received. Okay, and that's well noted. Is there any other comments, discussion for Het regarding BRT South? Okay, not hearing any. We'll move to the next item, which is the finance and policy. I think we lost Daniel Coleman. So if
Mr. Chair, this is Karen.
Oh.
Can we skip to marketing? Because I am really not feeling all that great, and I've got a lot to tell you all about for marketing.
Okay. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Let's move on to marketing, and then we'll hit finance and policy after.
Okay, thank you. So for marketing, we had some excellent presentations from two folks, several folks, one of which is we have a new artist in residence and then also folks who are working on bus rapid transit public engagement and also branding. And these are all consultants who have been hired to work on the BRT system. But first, the Artist in Residence is essentially there was a call for artists, and an artist by the name of Dare Coulter was selected to really provide sort of a specific focus on opportunities for art along the future New Bern Avenue bus rapid transit corridor, and more importantly, ways to engage the community in art that would help reflect the community where the bus rapid transit could go. This is going to be a year-long process. And during that year, there will not actually be any art produced because the corridor hasn't even future public art and ways to engage the community in art that reflects the community. So I thought that was really interesting. And it is a collaboration, and it's a project that's going to be overseen by Raleigh's Arts Department in coordination with our Go Raleigh staff, specifically Mila Vega, who are overseeing the New Bern Avenue corridor. So that was the first information. Secondly, we heard from 3 different folks who are working under HNTB, who is the consultant now for the next phases on the BRT on New Bern Avenue, around what's happening with public engagement, not only for New Bern Avenue, but also future efforts that are going to be coordinated for Western and Southern corridors being coordinated by the consultant WSP. The sub-consultants we heard from included Robinson, who is with a local company, a Raleigh-based company called P3, and also Jackie Turner as well. And what I really want to emphasize here is that Simone Robinson's P3 entity is overseeing the New Bern Avenue public engagement, and Jackie Turner is doing the southern and western corridors. And they essentially reported that they are trying to create a variety of workshops, communication processes, pop-up engagements, et cetera, public surveys in ways to try to engage the public during the challenges of COVID. So a lot of these public engagement opportunities are virtual. But these women, Jackie Turner and Simone Robinson, seem to have a tremendous background in public engagement. Jackie, in particular, did a lot of work around the Move Durham outreach. Both women are African American, and we thought that was really important so that they understand the communities that are being affected much better. And so one of the things that I did want to emphasize is we did mention something that I've heard repeatedly from our committee, our board, about the importance of engaging African American churches, African American local community groups, and also bus riders. Particularly using yard signs and things at bus shelters. And these are all areas that these firms are focusing on. So we were really glad to hear that. And then finally, related to this is we heard from those I oversee a process for creating branding for the new bus rapid transit system to really, and they have started with really looking at what being used to country, and a survey that'll be online through public input. and they are reporting to a branding committee, which is comprised of municipal and communications staff and transit staff from all municipalities and transit systems. So I stated that we are, as the Raleigh Transit Authority, really look forward to having an opportunity to look at what they're coming up with branding ideas so that we could have some input before things are finalized by the committee. So there was one other thing, I'm sorry, I need to mention, which is our staff, Kristen Treadway, has resurrected an old program called Adopt a Shelter, which is really an opportunity to encourage local businesses and community organizations to basically adopt a bus shelter, a high rider bus shelter, and just to be a second set of eyes and volunteers to help clean up shelters at least once a month, report back to the city if there's, glass or graffiti or anything like that, and to also just to create some goodwill with the community and promoting our bus shelters. So we had a lot going on, and I don't know, Brian Burnett was there. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to any of my reports.
Only thing that I think that I would want back on would be the adopt a bus shelter. I like that. I like things like that are very like organic, because I see adopt a highway all the time, and so I think this is an opportunity for people to practice ambassadorship and take ownership in their local community, and I do like the fact that people can do it, neighborhoods can do this, small businesses can do this. So I think it's a great opportunity to reinvigorate, and maybe I told a tale, but maybe I want to comment on the HNTB and just the whole the piece regarding the public engagement. The ladies were a very diverse group of ladies. I'm very excited that we were able to choose a term that was as diverse as us to push out the PR regarding the BRT community messaging. And I'm excited that these ladies have the milestones and timelines as dialed in as they do. And so I think what it'll do is give us a more organized effort. And I know we have people on our very specific, and Nick, I know Nathan is very cerebral when it comes to like milestones. Danny is very vocal when it comes to results or when things are happening, and laid out a presentation that was very definitive on when things should be happening, when things could be happening, also on who they were targeting. And I offer just a small caveat just to say that if they wanted to use our assistance, or if they wanted maybe just some more bodies to help with some of the community engagement, that if we could help, let us know. But I think the real low-hanging fruit, so to speak, is that reaching out to these faith-based organizations and reaching out to them proactively and over a sustained period of time to actually get more buy-in and to get more awareness, because that's what it's about. And I think that's how we're more the messaging go out to the folks that actually need it or will be adversely affected by not getting the information. So that's all I got.
Brian. And
yes, thank you.
And Robert Owens is the newest member of our committee, and we hope that you will join us next month. I didn't know if you were aware of our meeting this month, Robert, but we hope you'll join us next month because there's a lot going on.
I plan to.
Great.
Mm-hmm. Robert.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Karen, this is Nathan Spencer. Not a question, but a comment with regards to Brian's point about the faith-based organizations. I think right now is a great time. I know there's a lot of pastors who are working very hard to connect with people virtually, and it doesn't cost anything for us to ask them to bring the surveys or meeting opportunities or anything like that to their parishioners. So it's a good time for that.
Well, I certainly could follow up with all of these consultants and just basically tell them that our board sort of said, thumbs up to the work you're doing, and that area of church, the faith-based organizations is really something that we think is important, and we look forward to hearing more about their progress on that.
That's awesome.
And that we're also available if, whenever having, we don't have information from our staff anyhow, but they may not have us on their email list, so I could suggest that they do.
Oh, I think they absolutely should.
Okay.
I think, we were appointed by City Council because we are connected to each of our networks, so I think it makes only sense to do that.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Karen.
And at that, I'm going to sign off, but thanks for a great meeting.
Hey, Karen.
Yeah.
Karen, it's Andrea Epstein. I wanted to chime in and say thank you for your leadership and your help with the marketing and the overview with all the stuff we have going on. So that was a great report, and we will absolutely put all of you on those mailing lists. But I just wanted to chime in and say thank you. That was a great overview of everything if anybody missed it.
Sure.
Feel better.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Feel better.
Okay, and if there's nothing else, I'm gonna have ask David Eatman to. And the attorney's reminding me to excuse Karen, so I have excused her. And David Eatman, if you want to do a very quick overview on finance and policy, that would be helpful.
Yes, I can certainly do that.
Andrea, did I interrupt you?
No, I wanted to make sure. Am I in the right place with slides? I'm sorry.
You are.
Good? So we're going to do finance and policy. Awesome.
Yeah, sorry, Mr.
Thank
Eatman.
you,
Go ahead.
Mr. Eatman.
All is good. So during the Finance and Policy Committee, we did have two information items at this meeting. One was an update on our CARES Act funding. We were able to secure our CARES Act funds in a grant. So that means that those funds are obligated and they are safe from any form of rescission or anything that could happen to them from a reallocation standpoint. So that's good news. So during that presentation, I did outline how the funds were allocated. A little over half the funds are allocated directly for operating expenses from shortfalls that we expect for Go Raleigh access, and also for potentially some of our planning and TDM budgets. Those are because of funding cuts from other agencies, as well as a reduction in revenues that we receive from fares directly from fares charged for our transit services. So again, that presentation is on board docs. So if you would like to look at our allocations, that is within that presentation. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to give me a call about that. But again, one thing I would like to stress, even though we have that grant and it is executed, the good news is that grant can be changed if our priorities or needs changed as we move forward. The funds within that grant have been slated for FY21 this fiscal year and for FY22 next fiscal year. So we know that there's going to be residual effects well past this fiscal year and into next fiscal year. So we are quite honestly, being very proactive or conservative or whatever you want to say, and making sure that we are planning for the future if things don't recover as quick as everyone hopes. So hopefully that's not the case, but those funds will be available if needed within the grant as it's currently developed. Again, if anybody looks at that presentation, has any particular questions, please contact staff and we can provide information, or we can bring it back as an additional information item in the future. The second item was our Go Raleigh Access Rider Survey. This is a survey which gauges customer satisfaction as well as other demographic information regarding our Go Raleigh Access program. This helps us kind of gauge where we are, what our clients are thinking, and also get a good snapshot of how we're serving the community. As you would imagine, majority of our patrons on the Go Raleigh Access program are seniors, but also a large percentage of, I did not realize, quite honestly, that we had that. I mean, we've done this several times, but I don't think it's ever jumped out at me that the percentage of female population is actually very high within our program as well. So wanted to just acknowledge that particular study is also on board docs. If anyone has any questions regarding that study, again, let staff know. And if we need to bring that back to the full board in more detail at some time when we have a little more flexibility in the agenda, please let us know.
Thank you so much. With that, are there any concluding remarks from any board members? Not hearing any. I don't have anything except to thank you all for hanging in there. This was a long meeting and a long time to be on video, but we appreciate it. And I'm going to make a motion to adjourn this meeting. Can I get a second? Brian, were you seconding? I feel like you were trying to.
Yeah, sorry, Brian here. I'll second that. Sorry.
Okay. We are not with quorum, so we're just going to let the meeting off without a vote. But thank you all, and have a good day. Thank you to the staff for all your help, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening.
Great time.
Thanks,
Thanks, guys. Night.